King Mpendulo Zwelonke Siccawu's family, as well as members of the AmaXhosa Royal Kingdom, will today begin a repatriation process for the body of the king. They will start by fetching the body in Mthatha, where a small ceremony will be held before taking the body back to his home in Willowvale and then to the local morgue in Dutywa. The king will be buried on the 29th of November. Let's go to one of our reporters now who's at the Nqevu Palace, of course, just near Willowvale. Our reporter Atula Joga is joining us now this morning. Atula, very good morning to you. I hope you can hear us. What's the latest from the Nqevu Palace in terms of the repatriation process?
Okay. Well, a good morning to you in studio and a warm welcome to SABC News viewers across the depths of this country. Just a correction though, I am outside Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital in Mthatha. We are not in Nqevu Great Place today, but we are waiting for the royal family to make their way here. We have heard that they have left the royal place at 10 o'clock. They should be making their way here around 10 and 11 o'clock. We do know that on Thursday we heard of the unexpected news that the king monarch of AmaXhosa King Mpendulo Zwelonke Sigcawu had passed away in the early hours of Thursday morning. So his body has been here. So the family is actually coming here to do a ritual as they do in Xhosa culture. They will be carrying a branch of a leaf called unpack, where they will lead a procession to his home in Dutywa. They will be making stops along the way to say, we are taking your body, we are taking your spirit back home. You must not be left here behind in Mthatha. The big man fall on Thursday and his sound reverberated throughout the country. Condolences have been pouring in from the president of the country, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and the premier of the Eastern Cape. They have remembered him for his fortitude, for his perseverance, and also for his straightforwardness. They say he was a straight talker, a man who was stand to his word, a man who was quite stubborn as well. So we do hear that he was sick in Cape Town during the week where he passed on, and the family members asked him to get admitted in a hospital in Cape Town. But certainly the big man could feel maybe it was his last day. So he wanted to be amongst his ancestors. He wanted to be amongst his people. He came home and then he was discharged. He was admitted on the same day on Wednesday, and he passed away on Thursday morning. So this is the type of ritual that will be taking place here today.
Obviously, condolences continue to pour in. Of course, you're outside the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital there in Mthatha. And what sense are you getting? I mean, you know, you've had these condolences that have been pouring in from different quarters, also on the continent as well, various monarch as well. But from the hospital in Mthatha, then the body will be taken from there to the Nqevu Great Place. And are we expecting perhaps some politicians as well as other members of the AmaXhosa Royals to also come and pay tribute there today? What are we expecting?
Okay. Throughout the week, we have been seeing government officials making their way there. Yesterday, we spoke to the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governments and Traditional Affairs, Mr. R.I.P. He also made his way there yesterday. But what we understand today at this stage is that the family, the royal family, and other stakeholders and other royal families will be coming here to hold hands, hand in hand, to take the body of the king. But what I can tell you is that there's also a sense of maybe quite a debacle brewing maybe between government and traditional leaders, because at this stage it is not clear what type of a category of an official funeral that will be accorded to the king. The Deputy Minister R.I.P. did allude to that yesterday, saying, of course, this funeral is a quagmire. It is a catalyst. They will use it as a model going forward, because they did not have policies in place which accommodate kings. They do not have a burial policy that is allocated to kings which have been coronated. But the House of Traditional leaders have come forward to say they are very shocked by that statement. They are saying the government needs to move swiftly to address this issue, because the very same kings are coronated by government. So they do not want anything less than a funeral that will be befitting a king. And also the funeral, they're expecting it not to be under that of his subjects, such as your ministers. So it is quite interesting to see how that one will play out, and also the issue of succession debate as well.
If that is the sentiment that is being shared by the House of Traditional Leaders, what sense are you getting from the family? Because I recall one of our colleagues, if it was not you, who spoke to Prince R.I.P Sigcawu, and they'd also said they're waiting for some kind of confirmation from government or some talks to conclude pertaining to exactly the category of funeral that the late king will receive.
Yes, Minister Obed Papela did say that the family needs to make their own submission as well, to say this is the type of a funeral that we want for the king, and also state their reasons as well. You can tell from the family that they want a funeral that will befit their king, but at this stage they are tight-lipped. They do not want maybe to cause any a chaotic maybe sort of a debacle. So what they have said to us at this stage is that they are waiting and they will be following the processes to hear what a government will afford them. But at this stage, I can tell you that they do not want anything less than a funeral that will be befitting of a king.
All right, I think that's where we're going to leave it. Atula Joka, thank you very much indeed for joining us here this morning. Obviously, the body of the late King Mpendulo Zwelonke Sigcawu will be repatriated from the hospital, the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital in Mthatha, where he passed on, and then it will be taken to his home in Willowvale at the Ngadu Palace, and then taken to the local mortuary in Dutywa. That's how we understand what the process will unfold, and then on the 29th of November, that's how he will be buried. But it's quite a complicated process, in particular when it's supposed to be a send-off of someone of this particular stature. To help us unpack and give us an in-depth look at the process of repatriating the body of the AmaXhosa King, Inkosi Mpendulo Sigcawu, and the rituals that will follow, let's be joined now on the line by Loysio Nqevu, who is an African traditional analyst. Mr. Nqevu, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. This is a bit of a complicated one, I guess, if one doesn't understand what processes are followed when the body of a king is to be taken from the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital to his home, and then of course to the mortuary. Talk us through the process of what happens in this instance.
Thank you very much, Griselda. As it has already been alluded by your reporter, the family will leave the great place. They converge around at Dutywa. There is a convoy that takes them to... Hello?
All right, please continue, Mr. Nqevu. We seem to have you back on the line again. Apologies for that break there.
Yes, there will be a convoy of cars from Ngadu Great Place to the hospital where he passed on. Then there are certain rituals like talking to the spirit. You know, our tradition entails that a human being is made up of the physical part and the spiritual being. Then the spirit of the deceased king will be addressed to by family members as well as his praise singers. They will be talking to him so that when they take the body, the spirit does not roam around the hospital. They should take him totally home. So that's what they are going to do at the hospital. Then they'll be accompanied by the Tembu chiefs as well as the acting king of the Tembus back home, where there will be a short service of welcoming and receiving him home before taking him to the local mortuary.
All right, Mr. Nqevu, while all of that unfolds, my colleague Atula Joka also alluding to the fact that there is a quagmire in this whole situation where, the family would also want, a funeral which will be befitting for a king, but there isn't anything in particular at this stage which is on paper, if my memory serves me correct, which would say then a king would be then afforded a funeral, whether it's a category 2 funeral or just talk us a bit through that, because that might be one of the issues that might sit quite heavy on the family, and we've seen what the House of Traditional Leaders has also said.
Yes, it can be classified as a quagmire because there is a contrast between the two phenomenon that is a state funeral by the government, be it a provincial or national government, as well as the traditional way of doing things, the way we bury our kings. There is a contrast. Somewhere, somehow, they will have to compromise. There are some things they may be neglecting to do, because according to our experience, when there is a state funeral, it's a rally of some sort, and you will hear those who've been afforded the chance to speak. They come and celebrate the life and times of the deceased king. Whereas traditionally, we do not celebrate the death of a person. We mourn. Mourning entails, compromising and stopping doing other things. There are some activities that are supposed to be suspended. Like if we were doing it the traditional way, even the circumcision of boys, because this is the period of going to the mountain of our Xhosa boys, it would be suspended. All the boys who were supposed to go for initiation this year, they would go the next year. But these things, they cannot happen because now we are living in a democratic society. We are going to make a mixed masala, but nonetheless, it's befitting the king if the funeral will be awarded as a state funeral. Nonetheless, in between, there will be traditional rituals that should be taken into account.
This would definitely set, I guess, what would happen forward, because if you're sitting with the quagmire at this stage in terms of how government will respond to what the family and the House of Traditional Leaders is asking for, would this set the bar in terms of how traditional leadership is expected to be sent off even in future?
Come again?
Mr. Nqevu, I'm saying that we've not yet had a decision on what category funeral that the king will receive, but whatever is then decided, would that then set the bar going forward to perhaps deal with, I don't want to call it a crisis, but the circumstances now where there is a discussion that is being held about what category funeral the king himself should receive?
Yes. Meantime, we are waiting for the government to decide. On the other side, the traditional phase of the funeral will be planned and arranged by the Royal Council, in the presence of the royal family, as well as the nation at large. I'm tempted to believe the funeral will be categorized into two phases. There will be this phase of the government because they belong to Kota, that is the corporate governance and traditional affairs, where the politicians will take the stage and say whatever they feel like, because the chief or the king is also a member of the royal family and he belongs to that department. Whether the president will be there or the prime minister, that is one phase. But there will be a phase of all those who will be doing the traditional thing of the funeral.
Let's talk about the language as well that is used, in particular when you have the passing of a king. I understand there's a difference between the language in terms of departed, and if you could explain that to us as well, Mr. Nqevu.
The king is the supreme being of a nation, coming from a certain family. Pardon?
I think that I think.
Hello?
Please go ahead, Mr. Nqevu.
Yes, king is the top-notch position in the arrangement, social arrangement and organization of any nation. The king is at the top. Then below him there will be chiefs downwards up to the commoners. So the nation belongs to the king. He's the head of the nation. That is a king. But below that line there will be chiefs who are serving under the king. So we will be bearing a king, not a chief. But in our language, we always say Inkosi. Yes.
What I'm asking, Mr. Nqevu, is that it seems that there is a difference in terms of the language that is used, in particular when you have the passing of a king, that one doesn't necessarily say has died but has departed. Am I correct in that, that there's a specific language, as reflected, of course, in the statement that was also released by the royal family?
Yes. In our language, we say Ukhotamile. He's not dead. The spirit is living on, and he will continue if the correct rituals are made in his burial. He will come back in the form of a spirit. He'll be the one to guide the regent or whoever that takes the reins. So that is how we address the death of a king, Ukhotamile. We don't say he's dead, because even in his burial, we don't dump. We make the ritual in the same session as though we are planting something that is going to grow back and give us the crops.
All right, just finally, Mr. Nqevu, before we go, in terms of who will then stand in, I guess that is the next question, in terms of who will stand in now that the king has departed, that is certainly a conversation that needs to be held as soon as possible.
Yes, that one is solely depending on the royal family. They're supposed to hold a caucus where all the houses of the great place, the houses entail the great house, that is the first wife, commonly from another royal family. Then the second wife is referred to as the right-hand house. The third house is the supporter to the great house. The fourth house is the supporter to the right-hand house. Then the fifth one, we call it Iqiba, the neutral house that always intervenes whenever the two houses, the great house and the right-hand house, are in a quarrel or they are having some differences. So all members of those houses, they form the royal house, which has to decide whether the one who's going to take the reins will be from his siblings. That is, it can be a brother, it can be a sister, or it can be a wife, if and only if that wife comes from another royal family. Because she must be conversant with the royal affairs of the royal house. If not, a son. But in this case, I'm very doubtful if he's having a son that is already mature to take the reins. It may be a member of the family, be it a brother, a sister, or a wife, if and only if that wife comes from a royal family.
Indeed, very insightful. And thank you so much for your time, Loysio Nqevu, who is an African traditional analyst, talking to us, of course, about the process that will follow now. The body, of course, of the departed king will move from the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital, where he had departed, and will go to Willowvale. That is where the Great Palace is, and then will go to a mortuary in Dutywa. And of course, a number of rituals will be performed to, of course, take his spirit from where he departed, and then, of course, before it moves to Willowvale. It's quite a complicated process, of course, but befitting there, of course, for someone of this particular stature. Let's take a short break here on the program. We'll have much more once we get back.